This is the unrestricted free agent.
The Jimbo Fisher stuff. Were you in the room the other day when he threw?
Was. Part of the reason we had so much fun beating Clemson was because we used to talk a lot of shit to them and they couldn't handle it.
You feel fine, but your hands are shaking.
Coach Spurrier couldn't give a damn.
I want to take these athletes and mentor them.
Why can't the Gamecocks win at the SEC tournament?
So sunny all the time, so hot.
Too sunny.
Too sunny.
Fans are going to be fans, and people who understand the sport are going to talk sports.
With some weird dynamics.
It's going to be painful, but I think at the end of the day, we'll be stronger people for it.
Wednesday, day 3, school year, my house, much better than day number 2. So I'm starting this morning in a much better mood, and I owe a lot of that to you guys. Let me talk it out yesterday. Thank you. Thanks for being a part of the program. DC was up with us before 7 a.m. We're all cranked up. 6:51. He's giving a good morning to me there. Jan's back in. Jan, been a little while. Good to see you again. He says good morning to all the UFAs out there. Roger's in with a sunny outlook on the day as always. Craig with a good morning. What do you mean, where you been, Jan, to Craig? He's been right here. Come on now. Love it. Love how we begin today. And, wow, DC gave a good morning at 6:51, and then at 7:22 just had a thought to get off his chest, right? And that's where we'll begin today, because this is all the talk for Gamecock fans. Coming off of a conversation on the SEC Network with Ryan McGee and Marty Smith. They're the best, right? To me, those guys are the absolute best because they do the best job in speaking like human beings to coaches, players, whoever it is, who, I mean, they have a tough time coming across as human beings most of the time, right? They have a message, especially at SEC Media Days. This is when the conversation happened, right? And the SEC Networks gets all the head coaches to go in and talk with Marty and Ryan. And then they record stuff. They play it later on, building up to the season. Mark Stoops was the one that had Gamecock fans going yesterday. And the first time I heard it, I didn't think much of it. But the longer I think about it, the more you hear it, the more you, I think from the Gamecock perspective, go, huh? What? What was that? So remember, the day of media days for South Carolina was that Tuesday of the week. I don't even remember where Mark Stoops was talking. Was it that same day? Kentucky is by and large completely irrelevant at SEC Media Days. Would you guys agree? Kentucky's a basketball school. Their basketball coach certainly agrees. I can't remember a time that Kentucky has ever been relevant at SEC Media Days. That's just how I think they are perceived. Again, cute story. Mark Stoops done a nice job. Kentucky basketball is a difficult job. Quote Steve Spurrier. It's a tough place to win. So DC saying, well, Mark Stoops dropped the line, right? He was talking about changing climate versus changing culture, and you can dance around and wear stupid glasses. As you might imagine, Gamecock fans perked up when that comment is pointed out. Saying, whoa, that's a shot, right? That is a direct shot at Shane Beamer, and it absolutely is. Because it wasn't how they did it. It was that the University of South Carolina was the program everyone was talking about at SEC Media Days because of that video that Shane Beamer did that goes nuts, right? That did exactly what every head college coach in any sport in America is trying to do and get the attention in a positive way of recruits. And Shane Beamer has an advantage of doing that just because of who he is, his recruiting background. He's got kids, so he's connected to a younger way of thinking automatically. DC says, well, Mark Stoops just went full Dabo on Beamer. Why throw mud when you don't have to? I hope they get smashed by everyone they play. Now Beamer has to win that game. Whoa. There's a lot of different things in there, right? Beamer has to win that game now. Troy says, DC, if anything, Shane went full Dabo by dancing around, and Stoops said about Shane the same kind of stuff people say about Dabo. Okay, again, Troy, I think I've tried to break this down for you and other Clemson fans. There is a major difference in what Shane Beamer did than what Dabo Swinney has done multiple times, right? Dabo comes off like a goofball. He just does. That's his personality. I'm not disparaging his character, his coaching acumen. He is one of the best coaches in the history of college football. It's hard to deny that. It's impossible to deny that. Look where he's taken Clemson to and from, right? From mediocrity in college football to the mountaintop. He deserves a bunch of credit for that. But he also craves the spotlight and craves the credit for that. And this is what I saw from Mark Stoops. Whenever I think most of us, I'll certainly speak for myself, whenever I see someone in a position of power coming across like they need more attention, it bothers me in a big way. I automatically don't like what that person is doing. That has been Dabo Swinney in multiple ways through the years. The dancing is part of that. Now, I love that he enjoys the winning. I completely identify with that. I think most of us are like, yes, absolutely. Nick Saban, what are you doing? Why are you so miserable? Urban Meyer, how about enjoy it, right? Why coach if you can't enjoy winning? That was a real hard part of understanding Frank Martin's mindset, that he didn't like games. What are you coach and you don't like and the games are a difficult, arduous thing for you, and you love practice? That is a hard thing for most of us to identify with. Dancing and celebrating is not, but that becoming almost the main story for your program, that becoming kind of like a caricature of your entire program is going a little bit too far. But that's Dabo's personality, right? He is, hey, look at me. Hey, I'm going to do a press conference for about an hour and a half, whether you like it or not, because that's who I am. Clemson fans, you gotta take the good with the bad, right? You got to understand that's your guy. And that's who he is, and that's how he's perceived. And you can perceive him different if you want to in your own echo chamber. But that's who Dabo Swinney is. Who Shane Beamer is, he's not that guy. That's, hey, look at me. He's absolutely not that guy. And that's what that video, that's what made it as amazing as it was. It was clearly an orchestrated thing that included so many other people besides Shane Beamer, but he was kind of the center of it. It was 25 seconds, in and out, done, hit exactly the right notes that it was supposed to hit, when it was supposed to hit, the whole thing. And so I think other coaches, Mark Stoops being the number one guy, right? Mark Stoops seems to me to have a hard time. Let me put it this way. I find it hard to believe that Mark Stoops has ever been the cool guy. Simply enough. Simply put, right? Let's put this in very elementary terms, right? I don't think Mark Stoops was ever the cool guy. He never comes across as handling things in anywhere close to a cool manner. Like he's always kind of red-faced when he really gets upset, and it's always grinding and difficult. Older brother has had more success, right? He's the the other Stoops, maybe the other Stoops. There's a Mike Stoops in the family too. It's pretty done a lot of things. Then you go to a program like Kentucky where you're in the last few days, you've been fighting your basketball coach, your own basketball coach, for calling out your program. Sorry, I'm getting fired up, man. I gotta blow my nose and calm down here for a second. Is it hilarious that I'm talking about being a cool guy and now blowing my nose on the show? Irony. So Mark Stoops. That's the part that DC saying. Why throw mud when you don't have to? This is the problem with certain personalities at certain points, right? Dabo Swinney, you win a national championship and you're on your way to your second one and you're trying to convince people that you're little old Clemson and that's how you're still being seen when you've already played and lost it for another one and you've given Alabama everything they got and you're thumping your chest for beating SEC teams and at the same time you're trying to play this big underdog card. No, nobody's buying it outside of Clemson. No one. And it comes across completely as looking for sympathy when you deserve none. Kentucky, Mark Stoops, I get it, a good fit there because he doesn't require a bunch of attention and had the defensive blue-collar mentality that has hit home with a bunch of clearly recruits and has been now the reputation, has built up that culture he has. Won on both sides of the line, won on lines on both sides of the ball, offensive line especially. And now, Kentucky was just picked to finish second in the East. He was talking about gaining respect. He basically said to me, the best part about sitting where he's sitting is finally Kentucky football is getting respect. And if you go to play Kentucky, you know you're going to be in for a fight. Which just screams like insecurity. Like, hey, I just want you guys to think we're big boys. And now they finally got it. Well, now you got to talk like a big boy. Why would you pick on the team that's down 5th in the preseason, a team that you've handled consistently the last several years? Why would you do that? You need to start aiming your team's attention or goals or fan base's thoughts up, not down. That was the whole point that I didn't understand, man. Craig says, hey, man, when you put yourself out there like that, people are going to take shots. It's all good. Handle your business on the field. And, of course, how much of this will really matter on the field come October 8th when Carolina and Kentucky play? I don't know. Probably not much. Chris says he's just mad he didn't think of something like that. No, Mark Stoops could not have pulled off something like that. Jason says there's a difference between fans talking trash about an opposing coach. That's all fine and part of it. Coaches throwing shade on other coaches for no reason is silly. Great point, Jason. It's not just silly. It comes across as massively insecure to me. And red flags, man. Like, why? I get it that maybe someone had just shown Mark Stoops that video. Maybe he had just seen it earlier that day, or maybe he had been asked about it a few times and was annoyed. But that's the whole game at SEC Media Days. That's the whole media game in general, right? You get baited. You don't take the bait. Those questions are lobbed out to you, trying to reel you right in to get some clicks, to get some headlines, to get some stuff going. Like, this wasn't that at all. Marty Smith and Ryan McGee were just talking about, hey, man, those are the biggest softball interviews ever, right? They're not doing any kind of gotcha journalism. They work for the SEC network. And Mark Stoops went out of his way to say that specifically. is what has Gamecock fans up and going. Craig says the thing that bothered me was Stoops saying it's not about me. It wasn't about Beamer either. It was about the recruits. Exactly. Troy, if that's the way you see him, talking about Dabo Swinney, we will just have to agree to disagree. Fair, Troy. Jan says, same as Eli Drinkwitz going off on a Tennessee football program, and they're cheating. Eli, your 11-12 record at Mizzou does not deserve you that soapbox. You haven't earned that soapbox. Oh, I love that, because absolutely it did, in my opinion. If he's done things the right way, clearly he hasn't been accused of breaking any NCAA rules, then absolutely. The cheaters are fair game. Doesn't matter what your record is, right? And he was talking about his record is going to improve because he's going to get some wins because Tennessee clearly cheated and have even turned themselves in for it because they understood that would save them $12 million in Jeremy Pruitt's buyout. Steven, Facebook live stream. You got to connect with kids today, and that dancing and video was a part of it. Of course, that was the entire point. Jan coming back. I don't care how many 10-2 seasons Stoops has at Kentucky. Kentucky will always be a basketball school. Exactly right. Always. How many decades of history? It's not just that. Kentucky will always be a basketball state. South Carolina is going to always be a football state. I mean, Lamont Paris would have to win, would have to go to so many NCAA basketball tournaments in a row. Well, North Carolina had a tremendous run under Dean Smith, I think, and maybe even Roy Williams after that. I forget what the number is, but so many Sweet 16s in a row. That is part of why North Carolina is a basketball state. South Carolina is not that. It is a football state. Kentucky is a basketball state. It's more than the University of Kentucky being a basketball school. Louisville and Kentucky basketball. That's the thing in Kentucky, right? I get it, though. When you're a football coach, that's a problem. It's one of the reasons why I think Lamont Paris is the best fit that I've seen for the South Carolina basketball job in my lifetime. Because he doesn't seem to need to be the top dog there. Frank Martin did. Dave Odom did. Eddie Fogler did. They did not like not being the top dog. Dave Odom came from Wake Forest. Wake Forest basketball is king. Eddie Fogler came from the University of North Carolina mindset, right? And even Vanderbilt, you could certainly argue at that time was a basketball school. They have since become a baseball school and largely irrelevant in the SEC by and large. Mark Stoops, I thought, had been a good fit. But, man, you learn a lot about people when the perception of them changes, right? When they get to be seen or they get the respect they feel like they've been fighting for. You learn a lot about them and how they handle it. And this was not a massive shot, right? Mark Stoops wasn't pointing fingers. He wasn't Jimbo Fisher. He didn't go personal, I don't think. I mean, I think we all understand those were dumb glasses, right? And dancing around for football coaches is seen as really silly. But the fact that he pointed it out, I think, tells all of us that South Carolina's in Kentucky's head a little bit. That Shane Beamer certainly is on the radar of other coaches for what South Carolina is doing. I get the feeling that Mark Stoops, like most of us, he and people in his organization watch the South Carolina football social media videos specifically with some jealousy, right? I mean, we watch it with saying, wow, this is fantastically done, top notch, right? other programs, I think, got to watch that thing and say, why aren't ours looking like that? We need to do that. We need to do more of that. Then you watch a video at that time, a silly video. Everybody would agree with that, right? Justin King came up with the concept. He would say, yeah, it's a silly thing. I've heard him say, it was 4 takes, got it out in 10 minutes. But that's something that a lot of coaches can't pull off. Shane Beamer can. Hey, John. Good to see John weighing in from Fort Mill last Thursday. Yeah, met John at a Spurs Up show event over at the Carolina Ale House, and actually did something with Chris Phillips, who runs the Spurs Up show. That's going to pop out today, so watch out for that. Check out that stuff for sure. John, great to have you in here talking about the Carolina-Kentucky stuff from yesterday. Love to hear your opinion on that. And that's what this show is. And really appreciate you guys, by the way. Today, fantastic start. Tremendous contributions from you guys. That's what this show is to me. This is our show. I'm here to kind of connect the dots, go back and forth. I'll give you my opinion every now and again, but I'm much more interested in hearing yours. So Jan saying, doesn't care. Kentucky's always going to be a basketball school. Roger says, and Stoops also picks a fight with Calipari for daring to call Kentucky a basketball school, which it is and always has been, by the way. Yeah, man. That's what we're learning about Mark Stoops right now, right? Now that his program is respected in the SEC. And let's be very clear, getting picked second in the East this year is not a massive badge of honor. Everybody said it. 2 through 6 in the SEC, throw some darts. We don't know. And we all understand, where would the second place team, if we got rid of these dumb divisions, which makes zero sense if Missouri's in the SEC East, and we're about to get there eventually, finally, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, and this long been gone in basketball. It made a lot of sense when South Carolina first came into the league 30 years ago now. It hasn't made much sense since Texas A&M and Missouri came in. But if we were to get rid of the league, the divisions, and go 1 through 14 this year, where does Kentucky fall? I get it. They were second in the East, maybe thumping their chests a little bit, feeling good, right? Oh, yeah, we're going to be a contender. No one thinks that anyone, throw Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, was that 3, 4, and 5, right? No one thinks any of those teams, and 6, Missouri, 2 through 6, are anywhere close to Georgia right now. Maybe the most ridiculous fans out there. I get it. You want to predict South Carolina is going to win in week 3, noon at Williams-Brice Stadium, and sneak up on Georgia. Go right ahead. Takeo Spikes has done that on the SEC Network. He's a new guy. He's trying to make a name for himself. Doesn't surprise me. I would take that bet. Let's put it that way. I come at this from the South Carolina perspective. It would be fantastic for the Gamecocks to win that game. Don't get me wrong. Is it out of the realm of possibility? Absolutely not, because we saw a bad South Carolina team go to Athens a couple of years ago and beat a really good Georgia team. It happened. But that team also won 4 games for the season. And then they won 2 games the next season. And the programs aren't anywhere close. And the Kentucky football program, while massively improved, is nowhere close to winning the SEC East. They're just not. And if we're going, I don't know who you rank them ahead of in the SEC West. Who you guys thinking Kentucky is absolutely better than, as we sit here on August 17th, than an SEC West team? Auburn? I'll give you that one. But I love what I heard from Brian Harsin, actually. Rallying the troops, us against the world. You came at me specifically and my family, and it didn't work, even though the false part of that narrative is that it wasn't really anyone outside of Auburn coming at him. It was his own people. Right. Troy says Auburn. And that's it. And I agree. And only because Auburn is its own dumpster fire from the inside. That's it. DC says the keyword was stupid. That's what really made you mad, the stupid glasses. Well, come on, they are stupid glasses. That was kind of the whole point, right? But that means Mark Stoops missed the whole point. What he was saying is you can't change the culture by dancing around and putting on stupid glasses. Well, absolutely not. If that was one of Shane Beamer's first moves, it would have been the dumbest thing of all time, right? You change a culture by the people in the program and then putting in the work and getting results. And that's what happened in year one for Shane Beamer and company. That's what allowed him and his creative team to put that all together and for it to hit. And that's where guys like Mark Stoops and Dabo Swinney miss consistently. Lack of awareness. You got to understand all of that before you even attempt it or even think about it. Let's get more of your thoughts in here. Oh, interesting from Troy. Yeah, Jordan used to make up stuff to motivate himself. If Dabo motivated his team by saying little old Clemson, then he did his job. And oh, by the way, it must have worked 44-16. Completely agree. You know what Michael Jordan didn't do was talk in an interview about the stuff that he made up. When you're the face of the program, why would you put that out there to everyone? Are you trying to motivate everyone against your team? Because that's what that does. You can definitely use that in the locker room. You got to have the awareness, though, that you keep that internal. It doesn't make any sense externally. Yeah, we see you can add Tom Brady to that list, right? Probably all the greatest competitors ever used to make up stuff, right? Or tell themselves things that aren't really true or the whole thing. But coaches, there's no need to do that publicly. It's a lack of awareness to do that publicly. Yeah, John saying if we didn't want to beat Kentucky before now, with this, well, that's the thing about Kentucky and Carolina, right? And if you don't follow South Carolina football on a daily basis or year after year after year, probably don't understand. But South Carolina fans have viewed Kentucky not even a notch above Vanderbilt through the years, a half notch, right? It's always been those two programs below South Carolina in the pecking order from the beginning. And that's been it in the entire SEC. Those are the only two programs that South Carolina football has felt better than. And the results back it up. They always did. That's part of the reason why they could feel better than. Whereas Kentucky basketball is better than everyone else, right? That's how they view themselves. The results speak to that. Arkansas is next, maybe Florida after that, and then everybody else, football schools. Vandy, no one really cares that much outside of Nashville. No, even inside Nashville, no one cares. Jason says that Beamer video was all about timing with SEC Media Days. Still think the Full House theme song video with the incoming class is tops. Yeah. Again, silly stuff, right? But to give it credence or to allow that to bother you as an opposing head coach, fascinating. Teddy D. Easy, Teddy D. You can tell it's the middle of August with Gamecock fans, and I love it. I just adjusted my season prediction from 7-5 to 8-4, changing to a win on October 8th. Chris, good point. Facebook Live, Mark's the younger brother that gets upset when the older brother doesn't let him hang out with he and his friends. Yeah. You get that feeling big time, don't you? So, DC, you would put Kentucky ahead of Mississippi State right now? I don't know about that. Yeah, and that's the point. That's part of the point, right, Craig? And you can, to me, I can feel that. You can. I think it's hard for us to put it into words, but you can feel when someone is trying too hard. I can certainly feel it when I hear people talk in sports talk radio, when they feel like they have something to prove, and I'm turned off completely. Like, calm down. Take it easy. There's something like desperate in the voice or the delivery. You can hear that with coaches as well. I hear that often with Dabo Swinney in a lot of ways, where he's trying to convince people as opposed to stating his opinion and that being what it is and being secure with that. That was the thing. I think that's what drove people nuts about Steve Spurrier and helped build the arrogant reputation. Spurrier did not care, like Perry Orth says in our open, right? Didn't care if you're with him or not. He won a Heisman Trophy as a player. What does he have to prove? He got SEC championships all over the place, national championship, offensive genius. He knows he is. He doesn't care if you agree with him or not. He doesn't need you to agree with him for him to feel like he's right. You feel like there are a lot of people out there who do need that. And I feel that when I hear it. Let's see what Chris had to say. Sorry about that. Beamer's all about a family environment, and you do silly stuff around family. Well, every head coach in any college sport is going to say they're all about a family environment. Easy to say, right? We saw the last head coach at the University of South Carolina very much about what we are doing in the building and the organization. But the fact that it was a really kind of closed off deal, and as opposed to an extended family that includes your supporters, your biggest supporters, your fans, that's a strange way to run a family, isn't it? That is a family that is not comfortable at a family reunion, right? You know those families, don't you? The families that aren't comfortable with their kids ever having a sleepover, or they never invite their friends over to their house. Like, what's going on at that family? That was the vibe, I think, that Will Muschamp put out as a head coach. It's hard to trust or feel comfortable around that family because it's obvious they're not feeling comfortable around others. That's the vibe he established as a head coach of a program. Mark Stoops I think that little brother analogy is great, man. Chris, well done. I think it's that. It's, hey, we want to play with the big boys. Let me play. Let me play. Now you finally get to play, and you're still coming across as the little brother, man. Isn't this the same coach that had a quarterback get publicity about drinking coffee mixed with mayonnaise? Yeah, of course. And again, that's why every program is going to have silly stuff. But I can separate that from Stoops' comments. He was talking about, as a head coach, establishing a culture and how difficult it is. But that's the thing. It is much more difficult to do that at Kentucky than at other places. I think he was probably trying to point that out, right? But in doing so, he took a shot at South Carolina's coach. And South Carolina's fans, obviously, taking exception to that. Not going to let that slide. Kind of like this, yeah. It was killing Dabo with all the attention Steve Spurrier was getting at Carolina. DC, completely agree. Chris, this Muschamp was the family you really don't talk to. I think it's almost more the opposite. It was the family that really doesn't talk either. Yeah, and Roger, he did see. Mark Stoops did watch Bob Stoops go to Oklahoma, which is definitely a football school. And there's no way you can't have some bitterness about the advantages, right? How much easier it was in a lot of ways. That's just reality, right? But to fight your own basketball coach for it is kind of stupid. To create internal conflict within your own athletics department, I think, was it Mitch Barnhart, the Kentucky AD, came out and basically said that, nope, this thing's not going to happen that you want to happen. Doesn't matter who the coach is, basketball program. Kind of almost siding with Mark Stoops in this. So maybe I feel like Stoops is kind of puffed up right now, feeling good about himself. It reminds me a lot of Will Muschamp going into year number 3. South Carolina, most competitive depth they've had coming off the Outback season. Quarterback who you're expecting to take the next step. Clearly the face of the program, and Jake Bentley, good first couple of years. Now it's time to take it to the next level. Whew, that didn't work out, man. And now, as opposed to maybe feeling bad for, or at least not reveling in Kentucky's inevitable, eventual decline back to near irrelevance in SEC football, Gamecock fans are going to absolutely celebrate it because of this one comment. And I don't blame them. No, not a bit, especially with what South Carolina's gone through now in the last near decade, the end of the Spurrier era, Will Muschamp, and now coming around to Shane Beamer. As OU and Texas are joining the SEC, I think Stoops will be coaching Iowa before Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC. Really? Okay. So Kirk Ferentz's successor going to be Mark Stoops. He seems like he would be a perfect fit for Iowa in a lot of ways. I don't think I mean that as a compliment. But yeah, that style. You develop tight ends, linemen, you play some defense, get some good running backs, you grind it out. Nationally, you're never going to be quite to that mountaintop, but you're always going to be a pretty good program. You got to live in Iowa. Good luck. Interesting. Outside the box thinking. That's why I love you guys chiming in here on the live stream. 8 to 10 every day is when we do it. YouTube and Facebook, the easiest way to get your comments in on the live stream video up there, and also on Twitter. For some reason, Twitter doesn't allow the comment to pop right into our interface here. We got the audio up every day on Podbean. So if you're more of a old school radio person, you don't want to see my voice, I totally understand that. Don't want to see my voice. Don't want to see my face. Just want to hear the voice. And do that every day on the Podbean live stream. And then the audio podcast version of this thing goes out all over the place. It's even on Amazon. What is that thing called? The Alexa, the Echo. You can say podcast, Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent. It'll pop right up. Crazy to me. Technology. Love this conversation. We'll continue it. And did you guys see? October 8th is when Carolina goes up to Kentucky. A great time to make that road trip, by the way. You have the leaves as you go up there. I assume it will be relatively cool, but not cold yet. You got bourbon and horse racing as options for other entertainment if you go up for the weekend. Underrated road trip to Lexington, Kentucky. And now you got this involved too. You got raised expectations at Kentucky where you're picked to finish second in the East. You got South Carolina fans. It's kind of a rebirth, isn't it, in a lot of ways? I shouldn't quite say that, right? Because South Carolina fans have still been loyal through these years. It's a rebirth of optimism, maybe, or respectability, self-respectability. First time in a while, you feel good about the coach and the program and the direction that things are going. That you can get your hopes up without, even while you're saying things, try to pull yourself back or know that you got to cover up and protect yourself because it hadn't been fun. And odds are it ain't going to happen. Other college football news yesterday, Atlanta getting the college football playoff game in 2025, Miami in 2026. No big surprise there. Solid venues for sure. Atlanta especially. Miami is a great town for events like this to go get in there and get out, right? To go have a celebration, and then you see the aftermath, and you're like, all right, this was a good place to visit. Time to go. Like, it's like Vegas to me. Great place to visit. Don't want to live there. Atlanta is a great college football culture combined with a big city. So it's a little bit more of a fit, I feel like, in a lot of ways. Miami's fine. No one is going to – I haven't heard many talk poorly about a trip to Miami. Living in Miami is a different story, I think. But a trip there, fantastic. Phoenix is rising. Craig's getting hyperbolic about the Gamecock, it sounds like. Yeah, that's why I mentioned Texas A&M. That's what I wanted to point out, Roger. Or I mentioned October 8th. Alabama and Texas A&M also on October 8th. Yeah, interesting Saturday in college football for sure. And no doubt Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban will dominate the headlines that week. But from the South Carolina perspective, from the SEC subtitle perspective, that comment will be replayed a lot that week. That conversation will continue. Now, I'm guessing Mark Stoops will go back on and say, no, I wasn't talking about Shane Beamer. Or, I mean, I don't know how you handle that from there. I would love for Stoops to kind of double down and say, yeah, I said it. I meant it. You can't change a football program's culture by doing silly videos. You just can't. Shane knows that. To me, I think Kentucky fans would respect their coach that much, or could rally around their coach that much more. Draw the line in the sand, man. And if ever there's a time to do it, now is the time. Kentucky will be favored to beat South Carolina unless we have a lot of surprises leading up to October 8th. We all understand that, right? That's where the programs are. That's why Mark Stoops is puffed up a little bit. We saw it with Steve Spurrier. He knew he didn't have much to back up any kind of talk early on in his Carolina career. You fast forward to 2011. You got Jadeveon Clowney backing you up. And what was it? That was another one of those comments out of those conversations from SEC head coaches to Ryan McGee and Marty Smith. Sam Pittman saying Jadeveon Clowney. He was asked, who's the best coach you ever played against? And he mentioned a bunch of Alabama players off of last season's team. Quarterback, wide receiver, defensive lineman. Will Anderson, Bryce Young. But then he came to the conclusion of Jadeveon Clowney. I think it sounded like his final answer there off the top of his head, that he was just maybe the best defensive lineman ever in college football. So you got a couple of different approaches for sure. But Mark Stoops in Kentucky, they have handled South Carolina recently. Last year, I thought it was one of the better games that Carolina played, actually. Having a legit chance to win that game in Columbia early on in the season, where it hadn't looked great, man. When you had barely beaten East Carolina on the road, and knowing that Kentucky was a solid SEC program. Solid. Yeah, we'll say solid. I think that's fair. Not much more, not much less. Solid. But I think it was one of the better games they played, especially first half of the season. So if last year's team could get that close, we're all expecting Carolina to be improved. Certainly they were improved in the bowl game for sure. How much of that is going to carry over is a massive question in 2022. And then going on the road and doing it at Kentucky on October 8th. Same day, Texas A&M and Alabama. Let's be very clear, too. Mark Stoops didn't get anywhere close to what Jimbo Fisher did with his comments about Nick Saban. Nowhere close. But Gamecock fans are at a place right now where they just continue. They're hungry, thirsty for things to rally around and just reinvigorated in a lot of ways. Back to feeling like August has felt for years and decades, really, where you do start looking at the schedule, maybe changing your mind, like Teddy D said. I think probably 7-5. No, let's go 8-4. And then you can keep doing that math, right, in a lot of ways. That's the brilliance of August for college football fans across the country. It hadn't been like that for South Carolina recently. You couldn't do that with any kind of brain between your ears, unfortunately. But now you can. You got reason. Yeah, everybody's hoping their game on October 8th, Troy, is at a different time than Alabama and Texas A&M. Correct. Okay, let's see. You can change a culture by making a silly video if it gets you enough 4- and 5-star recruits. That's all Beamer's trying to do. Well, that's the thing, though. No, you can't. Because even if you get a bunch of 4- and 5-star recruits, if they're not the right kind of guys, you can't win in the SEC. And if you are getting those guys by making a silly video, that's a problem. They probably aren't going to be the right guys. Now, if you're getting some attention initially by that, or you're adding to the goodwill or the good feelings or the feeling like, hey, we're a good fit here, that's no problem at all. That's part of what Beamer's trying to do for sure, the program. But the meat of the comments from Mark Stoops, climate versus culture, I totally get, right? Where climate is temporary and culture is permanent kind of thing. And he does deserve it. He's gotten it, right? That's the problem with taking a shot at Shane Beamer going into year number 2 and coming off of a viral video there, is that there was no reason. It's completely unnecessary for Mark Stoops to even comment on it unless he sees it as some sort of threat. And that's when you know you got somebody, right? That's when you know you're in their head. But always being the underdog, always having the chip on the shoulder, being the younger brother, I can see where it's very difficult to change that mindset. It's very difficult to handle having the respect and not having to feel like you got to fight for it and be that person. Dabo Swinney, to not change the mindset of, hey, we are now a power in college football instead of having to fight to get there. With that power comes great responsibility, I believe they would say. But Mark Stoops' comments, absolutely on point. It takes a massive amount of work. He mentioned that in the reason why he defended his program how he did the other day, and came right back at John Calipari, the basketball school comment. But that's when competitive nature, when being an ultimate competitor can work against you. And that's when you got to have someone in your organization, if you're a head coach, to get your ear and say, hey, man, I know this is how you want to react. But you just understand, if you do that, then this is how the reaction to that reaction will be. This is how you will be perceived. So if you're ready for that, or if we think that's the right way to go, let's do it. But you need to understand it. And I think a lot of those guys probably do have that person and probably are told that, and they still go hard. And then you got to deal with the fallout, right? You got to deal with October 8th being circled now by a bunch of South Carolina fans. You know that you just sold more tickets to that game, more tickets to South Carolina fans, that is, if you're not going to have that thing sold out. I saw a few people, and then who knows how many will actually follow up on it now in a couple of months, saying, "Oh, I decided to go to that game." He didn't get personal, Roger says, like Jimbo, but he did poke at the fire a bit, stirred it up. Not sure why he would do that. The only answer is because he can, and because it got to him, because he didn't like it. He didn't like seeing the South Carolina program being more relevant than him that day. I'm pretty sure he did speak the same day, right? He got it twisted that relevance and respect are the same thing. Absolutely not. And it's a good thing if you're not massively relevant at SEC Media Days when you're Kentucky football. You get relevant by getting a guy arrested like Texas A&M did the day before, and we saw that actually happen with the Kentucky program too. Yesterday, day before, but not right before Media Days. That's how you get relevant at Media Days. You get relevant if you've gotten a beef with a fellow coach. You want to be under the radar if you're Mark Stoops at Media Days. Who cares? That's the whole point in his conversation. That has nothing to do with building the proper culture around your program and earning that respect that they've earned on the field. It is so irrelevant in so many ways to have that, to be that relevant program. And again, that's where you're fighting a fight that you're not going to win, man. You're not going to win it at Kentucky. You're just not. Can we name a school in the last 3 decades that had the reputation of being a basketball school and became a football school? Or the opposite? Nothing pops in my head right now. You guys help me out with that. Again, why I love the live stream here, 8 to 10 every morning. Love you guys popping on the YouTube and Facebook live to pop in your comments. I can't remember a school. Like Les Miles is a great example of a guy, a national championship coach that went to a basketball school and got beat down and it didn't work out and it was messy real quick. Kansas is never going to be a football school. What it is. You can have examples of other programs becoming much more relevant and getting some success. Kentucky is a good example there. And on the basketball side of things, you could argue that a good example of slipping a little bit. Not winning postseason games is a big problem at Kentucky. That's where they're at in their basketball program. And nobody feels bad for them. You guys got an example? What, Wake Forest maybe? Is Wake Forest now a football school? If Sam Hartman hadn't gone down, maybe I'd be more likely to agree with you because they've been irrelevant in basketball for the last decade or so. And they were really good, but they were never that good that they had a big-time national reputation outside of what? 3 years with Tim Duncan? And still, no national title to speak of. They don't get in the conversation. Alabama had fallen off so far a couple of decades ago that they were at where Tennessee is now. Tennessee a basketball school now? I mean, you would certainly argue that they've had, there is no argument. They've had a bunch more basketball success recently than football, but that culture hasn't changed. Where else will we go? I don't even know where to get close. Like Miami is clearly a football school. They haven't had much success in football. But Virginia Tech, another football school that has had more success in basketball recently. But they haven't changed the cultures of the school. Oh, good morning to you too. Hope your Wednesday's off to a good start. Ours certainly is. Talking a bunch about this Carolina-Kentucky thing. Mark Stoops stirring up a bit of a hornet's nest, right? Thanks, Troy, but still, Wake is kind of irrelevant, I think. They got to win a lot more games in football to be a much more relevant program that is making any kind of movement. So other football news from yesterday. We'll continue to talk this Mark Stoops comment and your thoughts and feelings about it and just what that's done now. October 8th, I think, is just ratcheted it up because I haven't heard that rallying cry amongst Carolina fans this offseason as much as I have heard it in years past, last year being an exception. Will Muschamp, maybe his biggest legacy at South Carolina will be he allowed Kentucky to pass the Gamecocks on the SEC totem pole. It just happened. We saw it, right? Under Will Muschamp's watch, Kentucky passed South Carolina. Something that Gamecock fans, I don't know if anything has bothered Carolina fans more. I don't know if uncompetitive rivalry games and Clemson winning a national championship has bothered Carolina fans as much as Kentucky passing them on the SEC totem pole. Because at least you could count on that, right? You could count on that in Vanderbilt. South Carolina ahead of that, being respectable or above that completely disrespected level. And Will Muschamp screwed that up. And now South Carolina continues to fight to get back there. And now the fight is that much more interesting and enthusiastic, I think, from the Gamecock fan base, whereas it had just become the thing, right? And there was no reason to add Kentucky to the list of kind of hated rivals because who doesn't like to go up to Kentucky and have some bourbon or watch some horse racing and then go to a football game? Hospitable group, great time, great trip. Clearly, they don't put the emphasis on the game as much as South Carolina fans do. It's not as much of a show, of an experience. It's just not, but it's a good one. And it has gotten better. And clearly the football teams have gotten better. But now there's a reason not to like them because their head coach publicly disrespected the South Carolina head coach. And maybe that is overplaying it and being a little sensitive. If you're a Kentucky fan, I get that. Say, come on, man. That's just who Mark Stoops is. Okay. I don't know if South Carolina fans either didn't know it or didn't care that much. Hope saw it. Big hug. Kentucky has had horrendous quarterback play and still passed us. Yeah, that's the thing too, right? That was one of the things that I think South Carolina fans could beat their chest about a little bit. Tim Couch, Jared Lorenzen, good quarterbacks. Kentucky's still not a better program. Gamecocks haven't had as good a quarterbacks as those two in this time. They simply dominated the lines of scrimmage. You're exactly right. And that is more concerning, I think, than getting a star quarterback in. And our quarterback play has been less than stellar, Craig talking about for the Gamecocks, no doubt. Roger says last year was very winnable, but we had no offense. Yeah. York joining the family discussion here as we creep into hour number 2 on the show. Good to have you, York. Man, it's great to be this close to football season. What are we down? I think I screwed it up yesterday. Didn't get the Steve Tannehill day right. Saw that later on social media. Again, not a big countdown guy. I think we're down to 17 today. 17 days to kick off. When you get in the teens, I feel like that's when I allow myself for it to be a real countdown. I can feel it a lot more. Counting down to kickoff. Soon we're going to be talking specifically more about Georgia State and the specific challenge there. Because, man, you talk about excitement, energy, enthusiasm, headed in a positive direction. And then if, hypothetically, Georgia State were to come in 7:30, September 3rd, and do what they did at Neyland Stadium a couple of years ago, knock off an SEC team. Former interim coach and Sean Elliott, Camden, South Carolina native. If that were to happen, Spencer Rattler's debut as a Gamecock quarterback, if that were to happen, all the air goes out. There's so many questions. The entire perception of the South Carolina football program, 180. If not 180, dang close, right? And that's why I try to keep in mind in these discussions, try to point out the positive and the negatives of year number one in Shane Beamer on the field specifically, and try to be as fair and even-handed as possible in these discussions. Because no doubt the last time we saw South Carolina, they absolutely drubbed the number 10 preseason ranked team in the country on a neutral site. A neutral site, they weren't able to beat them the last time. And also kind of signified the end of the Will Muschamp era or the massive decline, right? That's another part where other ACC teams passed you in the pecking order, unacceptable from the South Carolina standpoint. A couple of things that South Carolina fans have always been able to stick their chest out and feel good about their programs, right? Better than ACC football outside of Clemson. Better than Kentucky, better than Vanderbilt in the SEC. Given. That's the South. That was pecking order in college football, where South Carolina belonged for so long. Well, Gamecock fans not thrilled about it, would have rather been higher. And Steve Spurrier kind of taught them not to even be satisfied with that. But that's where reality was, right? And then things have changed. And now you get the matchup on October 8th with not just Carolina, Kentucky, but Texas A&M and Alabama. Roger says, might be a good day for a road trip for Carolina fans. Temperature so much nicer. Day or night game would be comfortable. You got to keep in mind, though, then you can't watch A&M and Alabama like you could otherwise. And I'm with Troy, hoping the Carolina-Kentucky game won't be at the same time as the A&M Alabama game there. Other note from yesterday, the Beamer Family Foundation partnering with Richland 2. Again, a great snapshot of why South Carolina fans, I think, have taken so much umbrage. That's the word. I don't even know what that means, and I definitely don't think I can spell that word. Are so sensitive or have been so enthusiastic in their response to the shot yesterday. I mean, just a bad look for Kentucky taking a shot on the same day that Shane Beamer's up on the podium with his wife, giving school supplies to Richland 2 School District from their foundation, writing a check for $4,000, I think it was. Because that's part of the culture change, right? Will Muschamp never did any of that. If he did, he didn't do it publicly. And then here Shane Beamer is, before the second season ever kicks off, part of the community, giving back. It happened yesterday. Saw it. Visual evidence of it. Players, Amarian Brown, did you hear him? We couldn't have scripted it better. Right? Very mature guy. Speaking about the importance of being a community leader, being part of giving back. Like, why are you going to take a shot at that program, especially? It would be different if things had been what they used to be and Kentucky was still trying to fight its way up the totem pole, right? Then you could see it. Then I could see it. Then it makes more sense. But that's the thing. And that's where the personality for Mark Stoops, that's where it worked against him yesterday and is working against him now. Maybe he realized, maybe he was smart enough to realize this year's game, a home game, and you don't have to go into the Lions' den, so to speak, at Williams-Brice Stadium. But when he comes back to Williams-Brice, he will not be a popular guy. this will remain. It doesn't matter what happens up until 2 years from now. Gamecock fans will remember. And he's been written off, right? He's on that list now of coaches you're not going to like. Added to John Calipari, right? And the Kentucky-Carolina rivalry got that much more interesting. And I love it. Thank you, Mark Stoops. Stoops knows Kentucky doesn't have the culture we have, even if it's only just a little coach changing the climate here, threatens to put Kentucky back under us again. Good point. Love to see a new face and name him on the program. South Carolina Sports and Uncut Media is the YouTube handle there in that comment. Guys, go check that out. But that's the thing, right? If you don't have that, why you don't have to go at South Carolina to build yourself up, or maybe that's part of the strategy, right? All right, did you see how that fan base reacted? We need you guys to be like that. I don't think Kentucky fans would identify with that at all. Oh, Roger going old school on us with Satchel Paige's advice to Mark Stoops. Don't look back. Something might be gaining on you. Good line there. I love that this happened. We need more of this in college football because in the big picture, it's so innocent, right? It's just a sports story. Hey, your coach said something about my coach, and we, as the supporters of the coach and program, didn't like it. So now we don't like your coach. And we want to win that game that much more. Beautiful. On August 17th, 2022, if that's what we can discuss, that is what we love about college football, right? For those, what has become now 4 hours on a Saturday, you go inside a stadium with 70+ thousand people. You get to yell your head off. You get to watch guys pouring their guts out on the field, smashing into each other. A complete diversion from reality. And if you get to talk about it during the week, what you saw, what you agreed with, what you disagree with, and now you got the two coaches, one coach not saying nice things about another for no reason other than they compete against each other, and maybe he's a little jealous of the attention the other one got and how he got it. I love it. It's something we can all ultimately feel good about, right? DC, how was Mark Stoops already on that list for you? Please explain. I don't understand that at all. How, as a South Carolina fan, Mark Stoops would have been on that list of coaches you don't like. Please explain that to me. Outside of jealousy, outside of you don't like getting beat by him, personally, I don't think there was anything from Mark Stoops that could have put him on that list reasonably. I don't see it. I don't know what it would have been. While you get that ready for us, I want to tell you about the sponsor of the program here. And again, appreciate all you guys supporting the show. Freedom Primary Care does that as well. Freedom Primary Care up in Fort Mill, South Carolina. If you can't get there, if you're not in the neighborhood, you can do telemedicine options. It's who I trust to take care of my family and the reason I trust them. One of the main reasons is the name says it itself, Freedom Primary Care. They give you the freedom. You have the freedom. Yeah, I shouldn't say they give you the freedom. You have the freedom, and they respect that freedom at Freedom Primary Care to make your own medical choices, which, again, every time I say that, it boggles my mind that it has to be said, and that has to be a thing, but that's where we are in 2022. And, man, especially as a parent, scares the bejesus out of me in so many ways. Well, Freedom Primary Care is not there to scare you. They're not there to intimidate you into doing something you don't want to do. They're there to educate you and to give you options. You want to go more naturally minded? Give you the options for that path of care. You want to go more conservative, more traditionally minded? They give you all the options to do that as well. Check them out. Give them a call, 803-627-2447. That's Freedom Primary Care, who I trust to take care of my family. I know you can trust to take care of yours as well. That's Freedom Primary Care up in Fort Mill right now, 803-627-2447. What do you got, DC? Give you some time there. Mark Stoops already on that list. I need to hear a reason. I need to hear some evidence. Because, again, he's the little brother of the SEC, right? You don't even say Stoops coaches Kentucky most of the time, right? It's Mark Stoops because he ain't Bobby. As I go with a dramatic swig of water. And that's part of, I think, why he sees things the way he sees them. That's got to be tough, doesn't it? It's one thing to be Shane Beamer, son of a Hall of Fame coach. One thing to be Tommy Bowden, son of a Hall of Fame coach. But it's another thing to be the younger brother of a Hall of Fame coach. And like Bob Stoops definitely strikes me as the cool guy. Right? You see what he's doing these days? Selling tequila, hopping on Fox's show. I think now he might even be coaching in the new XFL, the USFL. I can't keep up with these leagues. He popped in at Oklahoma just as an interim coach there for a little while. His personality and his sideline demeanor, DC, that's all you got. But to me, he didn't win enough for that to cross over the line as a South Carolina fan and say, I don't like that guy. But I get it. Maybe if that's more your attitude of the opponent, typically that maybe they have to do something for you to not have them on that list. Okay. But I don't think if you had a flash poll yesterday before the comment from Mark Stoops popped up, like, what do you think about Mark Stoops? I think most people would have said, don't really have an opinion of him personally, but respect what he's done at Kentucky. Got to respect him, kind of thing. Roger's saying it's definitely different when it's a brother versus being the son of a coach. I'm trying to think of other examples out there. You know, obviously, Tommy Bowden isn't the only Bowden coaching out there. Terry, brothers. And the Stoops have another brother, Mike, that's a coordinator as well, or has been a coordinator for a long time. There are a lot of families out there, but I feel like most stay kind of on the same path. And I guess you could probably argue that these guys were on the same path. Bob Stoops being the coordinator for Steve Spurrier back in the day, but then he parlayed that into the head coaching job at Oklahoma and in wild success before most of us ever knew the name of Mark Stoops, I think. And then for Mark to take the head coaching job at Kentucky when he took it and knowing what it is, right? Joker Phillips just kind of buried that program in a lot of ways. I thought Rich Brooks had it as a kind of a little program that could, and certainly respectable. The Harbaugh brothers, no, because John had so much more head coaching success while Jim had so much more player success. And then now I kind of see them equally. Maybe I wouldn't have said that this time last year with Jim seemingly being on the verge of getting thrown out of Michigan there. But a good name, certainly a great family to mention, the Harbaughs there. I don't know if there's ever been quite the distinction there, the disparity between national championship winning head coach and then head coach in a major conference, clearly the major conference, but on a different level. So that's got to be tough for Mark Stoops. That can't be fun. And then just being the football coach at Kentucky, not a fun job. I don't think anybody would describe that as a fun gig. I mean, if you took the the mindset that, hey, anything we do here is kind of gravy because it's a basketball school and there's not as much pressure to win here. But clearly that's not how Mark Stoops looks at it, right? It's that it's a grind to respectability and it's more difficult here and the whole thing. Yeah, was Mike the head coach at Arizona? I have to look that up. Roger saying Mike Stoops, another Stoops, didn't have much success at Arizona. Pretty positive he was a coordinator for a while at Florida State. Been around. So you got the brother dynamic there. And you feel like maybe that's one of those things that brothers can say to each other that fan bases don't appreciate at all, especially if you're taking a shot at Shane Beamer right now at South Carolina. But so happy to be back at this place in college football compared to off seasons past, specifically at South Carolina with the Will Muschamp kind of disintegration and the seriousness, the weight of the COVID situation in the last couple of years, right? To be pretty much past that right now and to be into this. So happy. Roger does say that, yeah, Mike Stoops was a head coach there at Arizona for a couple of years. Other things wanted to touch on just briefly. I did mention that Atlanta gets the college football playoff game in 2025, the title game. Miami in 2026. Need to mention the Braves as well, just from the baseball perspective. And I get it that if you're all into college football right now, you don't want to hear about the Braves. We won't touch on it too long. It's not just that Atlanta shut out the Mets last night for their 8th straight win, get the lead down to 3.5 games. Not just that Charlie Morton looked really good on the mound. Mike Soroka making his rehab start, first one down in the minor league, says it's the first time in a long time he's pitched in a game, been healthy afterwards. His sinker's better than ever. I think he struck out the side one inning in 10 pitches. Man amongst boys for sure is one of the comments I saw social media wise. I think he might have just he threw 3 innings and struck out 8, I think is what it was. Something like that, something crazy. So you got not just what happened on the field last night, what's happening with Soroka building his way back, ideally, to the field just in time for a stretch run. But also the long-term future for the Braves just got that much brighter and makes me appreciate the front office that much more. Saw it earlier this year with Austin Riley getting a long-term deal locked up. The largest in Braves history, 10 years, $212 million, I think. Now it's Michael Harris, 21-year-old rookie, youngest guy in the big leagues, signing an extension for 8 years and $72 million. So you already had Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies wrapped up through 2025. They signed Matt Olson to like 2029 or something crazy. Now you add Austin Riley and Michael Harris. That's 5 guys on my hand right now. I just counted 2. Locked up through at least 2025. At least the next 3 seasons after this. Fantastic for Braves fans. It's an organization, too, you can feel like understands and gets it and is proactive instead of reactive. The exact opposite. Did you guys see Dennis Eckersley's comments during the game? He's a Red Sox analyst, and I think this is his last year, and maybe he knows it. Maybe he's just coming at it from that standpoint. They were playing the Pirates. He's like, yeah, this never seen anything like this roster. Pathetic. There's no prospects. Poor Pirates fans. And it sounds like that is some real talk. You guys see the latest golf drama, Patrick Reed suing the Golf Channel for defamation, specifically Brandel Chamblee. Patrick Reed, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? I mean, defamation is something that is, from a legal standpoint, as I understand it, very difficult to prove. I mean, there has to be like evidence of actual malice. And Patrick Reed has given everyone who has ever watched golf plenty of reason to not speak highly about him. This being the latest example. You're going to sue him for defamation? What are you doing, man? Just like the PGA, what are you doing? I guess I get it. And maybe it wasn't the PGA specifically, but this is another crack of the PGA Tour's kind of facade, in my opinion, of their stance against the Live Series that Tiger Woods flew in up in Delaware yesterday. Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, all in a meeting trying to get everybody on the same page moving forward to keep this thing from completely disintegrating and everybody running for the money. Because already so many more guys have done it than I ever would have thought. I thought Dustin Johnson was kind of going to be the only one there for a little while. And Dustin's always been a different dude, right? Would have surprised me. I think the Live Series might have been even okay with that, but they're so aggressive. They're paying so much money out. And so many guys have taken that money, including Patrick Reed, right? And Tiger Woods has got it was sad to me to watch. There was video of Tiger hopping off a plane, getting into a car, and just him walking. It didn't look good, man. There was clearly the hitch and the giddy up. And I've seen it on the golf course to a certain degree, but just to see it in street clothes and to know that he's still dealing with that injury from the car accident as much as he is. But apparently the PGA Tour commissioner, Jay Monahan, was not in the meeting. This was kind of a players-only deal. And I think maybe a lot of it might have been about Monahan or the leadership and the messaging and the whole thing. So the golf drama continues, and this time it's with Tiger Woods being part of a top players meeting. Something to keep an eye on for sure. But nothing compares to the college football discussion that we are in the middle of right now. A couple of you guys weighing in on the Braves, though. Olsen, Albies, Riley, Acuna Jr., Harris, all locked up. Hopefully Dansby Swanson and Max Fried will be next, John says. You get that done. Wow. I don't know if you can even make that work from a financial standpoint. But, yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure. That's almost going greedy there. Dan asked, do you see the Braves going to a 6-man rotation for the stretch run or staying with a 5-man and giving guys extra days of rest where possible? Good question, Jan. I don't see a 6-man rotation. That would give guys extra days rest. Are you saying doing that to give them extra rest down the stretch? I don't think it's tough because knowing the lack of success Bobby Cox had in the postseason in all those Braves teams, right? And then just recently having watched the captain and seeing all the success those Yankees teams had, there clearly is something different about managing in the postseason than managing in the regular season. And I said it yesterday, and maybe it was the day before, how Braves fans would definitely trade in postseason success for any of those division titles. Ultimately, it's cute if you win a division title, but if you don't do anything with the postseason, it's a disappointment. So I say that to say, however you can set yourself up to have the most success in the postseason, that's what you got to do. And I'm not convinced that's extra days rest. I think a lot of times that has the opposite effect, especially in baseball where you get so routinized, man, these pitchers, especially the pitchers, right? If you're used to throwing every 5 days, your life is just that routine. You get out of that, it becomes goofy. And that's where it translates to the postseason success, right? You don't have the typical 5-man rotation in a best of 5 or best of 7 game series. So to me, whatever you can do to get your guys prepared for that change, that shift that you got to make, you got to manage and play a little differently in the postseason. It's not 162 games, and it doesn't all even out. You got to win today. So whatever they can do to make that happen, I'd say do that. And if you think it's extra rest that's necessary in the whole thing, but now you got maybe Soroka coming in the mix, I don't know. Anytime I hear extra rest for a playoff, a team headed to the playoffs, I get concerned. Unless it's just like a running back position. You want to give a running back extra rest? I got no problem with that. I don't think he's going to lose the rhythm, everything, especially now that you got 17 games in the regular season in the NFL. You want to do that? You want to give a wide receiver out there who's clearly, Tommy Bowden used to call it like a Ferrari type guy, a sports car guy, where you're top speed, but a lot of times it's easy to break down. You want to give one of those guys, I'm fine with that. But your quarterback, it's all about timing, rhythm, the connection with your teammates. You're a pitcher where it's all about the routine and the whole thing. I don't know, man. Jan giving us a lot of numbers here. Riley's through 2022. Olson's through 2030. Harris through 2030 now. Acuna through 2028. Vaughn Grissom, forgot to add him to the mix. We still can't get too excited too early about him yet, right? 2028. Always 2027. Spencer Strider, great point. He's just continued to look better and better, hasn't he? Wilson Contreras, great point. 2027. Kyle Wright, 2026. And Freed, 2024. Best front office in baseball right now, and I don't even know if it's close. And that's saying a lot after the Freddie Freeman end, right? Yeah, I'm with you. The bullpen games in the playoffs in the World Series, yeah. That's what you want to figure out, Brian Snitker. Come up with your strategy in the playoffs and manage towards that down the stretch. Because, again, I don't care about an East Division title. I am a spoiled Braves fan that's seen plenty of those. It doesn't matter. Just be right in the postseason. It was anything but right, that comment yesterday. And again, I will stand by it. The first time I heard it from Stoops, I was like, I don't even know if that was a shot. I don't even know. Maybe that was just on his mind, and he said the dancing and the stupid sunglasses. But it turned out to be a really stupid thing to say, because absolutely, the more you hear it, especially if you're listening to it from a South Carolina standpoint, absolutely was a shot at Shane Beamer. Now, how he responds, I think, will be priceless, because he gets it, man. There isn't anyone out there who has seen and heard Shane Beamer as a head coach now for the last year and a half, and who comes away with anything other than, yeah, he gets it. Maybe Clemson fans who are all sensitive and are trying to draw parallels to Dabo and then have taken stuff from Carolina fans through the years. I get that. But we all get that. But anyone close to unbiased understands that Shane Beamer gets it in the way that you need to get it as a college football head coach. So I would imagine, and I already saw some shade thrown by the Gamecock football social media account yesterday, coming back at that comment. But I would imagine Shane Beamer's got something in the mix, in the works as a response to that. But I would think it's not going to be like an over-the-top, I'm coming back at you, Mark Stoops, and we're going to make this a thing about us. It would be something more like having a little fun with it, or taking a jab back at Kentucky that's relatively playful, I would think. Maybe even the fact that maybe it's just, hey, I don't talk about coaches that I haven't beaten, something like that. But you can make dang sure we hear everything, and I'm looking forward to that list getting shorter of coaches that I haven't beaten, something like that. I'm guessing is where Shane will go. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I didn't see him responding so strongly to Luke Doty's injury about this time last year. Didn't see that response coming after the Georgia game last year that went viral about all the 5 stars all over the place. So I definitely don't consider myself an expert predictor on Shane Beamer's public messaging. But it's going to be fascinating to see. DC says, Stoops has always been a crybaby on the sideline. He acts just like Bo Pelini to me. I really can't stand somebody that has that kind of personality. Okay, more background for why DC had Mark Stoops on his list of disliked coaches before this. Chris, I don't think I would disagree with this. The best response from Beamer is no response. The problem there is you don't want to come off as running away from something, right? I think because he's going to be asked about it. And so when you're certainly the best response is not to just come out and go after him without it coming up, because that comes off as overly sensitive, right? It can come off that way. So I think there has to be some sort of response to the question being asked about it, not to the actual comment, right? I mean, this is not a situation where you call a press conference to address comments that have been said out there, Jimbo Fisher, and then you go on to rewrite that narrative and say, oh, it's really unfortunate that this thing had to be public. Love that. Love it. Did Stoops go on to say after the jab something about we know how much time and money the fans put in to come see us play? Craig says, I thought he was trolling Beamer there too. You have the entire audio? I could look it up real quick. I don't remember him saying that. He might have said something to that effect, but maybe I didn't hear it like that, especially. But I mean, that would just say that Shane Beamer's more in his head as well, because Beamer getting a bunch of not just respect and admiration locally for that video that he went and sat his players in the stands and that was released. And he got, I think, some regional and maybe even national pub for that too. Respect. And if that was the case, then wow. Hey, look at that. Spurs Up Show popping in as well, saying excited to chat with you tomorrow. Yeah, we're gonna have Chris Phillips on some point tomorrow. Also got Coach Ballgame on. If you don't know this guy, check him out on social media. He's gonna join us at 8. I was just gonna send Chris a text on this so I can just do it on the show, right? So anytime, maybe 8:30 on, we'll get Chris popping in. I told him that I just love when I'd prefer not to schedule times, and when people pop on, I'm so happy to see them and have them hop in and join the show. Like to be surprised in that way. But early tomorrow, going to be talking some baseball, and specifically like just the love of the game, how to get kids involved in the whole thing, what Coach Ballgame is doing. He was just at the Field of Dreams. He's been at the All-Star game. He's been all over the place doing it with Major League Baseball. Just seems like a really good dude, and kind of where I am in life as well, coaching kids. October 8th just got a lot more interesting, no doubt. And I know everybody talking about Gamecock football, Spurs Up Show included, all over this thing. And so my general take is to not blow it out of proportion too much. Is to just to say thank you, Mark Stoops. Thank you, college football in general, for what you represent in our lives, being able to have fun with players and coaches in a game, right? Ultimately, that's what this is. Such a small comment. And if you're all fired up and you're saying it's a complete lack of disrespect and the whole thing, hey, good for you, man. Good for you. If this is going to cause you to get in your car and drive up to Lexington, Kentucky on October 8th, and you weren't planning on doing that, and you're going to go and you're going to scream your head off and show the support for your team, especially because of this one comment, good for you. That's definitely not how I see it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. It would be awesome if the entire football team comes out on the field in Lexington on October 8th with those same cheap sunglasses on. That's how I would respond. Brilliant, DC. Like, that is exactly something that it seems like Shane Beamer would do, that this program would do at this point. Next level. Maybe if they did it in practice, right? Today, how awesome would that be? And then I could hear it, right? I wear my sunglasses at night. Maybe they wait to do it at night, or if they had a night practice schedule and they did it. I guess that would probably be too old of an audio pull, of the music pull. I don't think the recruits would be on the same page, but we know the fan base would, right? I would love to be sitting in that meeting that Justin King and his staff are having about this, or had yesterday, probably more likely, right? I mean, they might have even gotten a heads up from the SEC network at some point that, hey, this is going to come out. You guys just wanted to let you know, kind of thing, just a heads up. See, then you're just rubbing it in, right? Save the sunglasses for the post-game. Beamer pulls out the shades at the press conference after they get the win. Ultimate troll job. See, that's something that feel like Dan Mullen might have pulled off. Or that's when you don't need it, right? You just beat them. That says everything you need. You don't need to rub it in. You need to show before that you have a good sense of humor about it and you're not letting it mess with you at all. Or it to me, it's a stronger response saying that, yeah, we know that we're in your heads and we love it. And we will use that to our advantage in the game. After the game, you're good. You're good. You don't have to do anything else. You've earned it. You save that maybe for next season's pre-game press conference. Maybe I could see Shane Beamer rolling into a pre-game press conference, though, the weekly press conference with shades on. That would be cool. But those coaches are in such game mode at that point during game week, that'd probably not happen at all. So I think now would be the time to do it, right? And then just move on from it. Because if you give it any more credence from a Carolina perspective, then you're giving it too much power. But it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And again, thank you, college football, man. That's why we love it. The passion you get to display in the stadium, that you get to see all these people jumping on board, you're hearing the music, the pageantry, the tailgating, the whole thing. That's what we all love. That's why I'm sitting here talking about it right now to you, with you. That's why you guys love it too. And just to add another layer to that, that's what SEC Media Days should be all about, and that's what I think we missed. That's what that event has become. It's kind of become the antithesis of that. It's all about not saying anything that does that, and us taking it way too seriously and overanalyzing things to absolute death and almost squeezing the juice, the fun juice. That's an awful phrase, probably. Squeezing the fun out of the game and just making it something more serious than it really is. But when these coaches get paid what they get paid, when ticket prices get jacked up to what they are, now add name, image, and likeness deals in the mix and all the money that's involved there. I get it. To me, that's unfortunate. On the other side of that thing, we're now able to watch so much more college football on TV. A Saturday TV viewing experience is so much better than it ever was. So, got to take the good with the bad in that way. But I hope, even if you are the most vehement Gamecock fan who feels the need to stand up for Shane Beamer and your program and going to just go hard at Kentucky as much as you are, I hope in the big picture you can realize it's just fun. Relatively lighthearted stuff, man. Fun Juice, your favorite band. Attaboy, Trey. Attaboy. So I never would have thought. I thought it was Carolina and Missouri that was developing this odd SEC East rivalry that you never would have saw coming. You never would have seen it coming, that the athletics director at Missouri would accuse Don Staley and the Carolina environment of being dangerous to the players and even racist or whatever that thing was back in the day. It made very little sense and clearly had Carolina fans versus Missouri fans, and that thing has become a bit of a thing. It helped that you had the tremendous Connor Shaw comeback out in Missouri a bunch of years ago. You've had some good games in the mix. I think it helps that you got Eli Drinkwitz, a guy who's not afraid to say things, to say a few colorful things these days. That helps. Another guy that's kind of the same age as Shane Beamer, taking the same approach to college football now, I think really in the sweet spot from a technological standpoint, an ability to relate to recruits standpoint, and at programs that really need improvement and need advantages, any advantage they can get. Chris back in from the Spurs Up Show. At the end of the day, it's a game. It's fun. The trash talk makes it incredibly entertaining. Bring back the days of Spurrier where coaches weren't afraid to jab at the opponent. Everybody would love that, right? Craig included. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping maybe we're going to come back around to that, right? Because, and I'm hopeful of this from a social media standpoint as well. I think, well, it's crazy from a media inside perspective, having worked in legacy media and TV and radio for all these years, how that thing has kind of come around. That I remember talking, it was randomly, Grayson Griner's mom is a real estate agent, or was a real estate agent in Columbia, and I was trying to sell my house several years ago, and she came by, and I just happened to know Grayson's sister because she was at like Gymboree classes, had a kid about my kid's age. And so, hey, yeah, I know your son because I work. I would never say this otherwise, but because I've interviewed him a few times with my job. And she's like, oh, yeah, I haven't watched local news in a couple of years. That's the first time I've heard someone make the conscious choice and tell me they made the conscious choice not to watch the local news. It seemed like a philosophical choice on her behalf. But I feel like, I mean, the numbers show that absolutely is what has happened from a media perspective, that the traditional outlets, the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, the national news that would come on after that in the evenings, those numbers have gone down. The trust has gone down with all of that stuff. The more and more outlets like Chris at the Spurs Up Show, Gamecock Central, Big Spur, more of those have come up, and the more and more popular they become, get a chance to go to those 24/7. Why would you wait until 6 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night to hear anything like you used to? Have to wait until Rick Henry came on at WIS, right? You don't have to do that anymore. So it's been fascinating to see that transformation in my lifetime. And I'm about the same age as Shane Beamer and Eli Drinkwitz. So to also see the social media craze, you got to give Dabo Swinney a bunch of credit for being way out in front of that thing and understanding that's exactly the best way to gain an advantage in recruiting. And you got to change your old school mindset of sending mail and calling guys on their landline and harassing them on the phone. It's all about texting and tweeting, being on social media. That's the way that you connect to these guys. So that's been fascinating to see. And from a coach's public speaking standpoint, right? It was great back in the day where Spurrier and Fulmer would go back and forth, but they'd have very limited opportunities to do so, right? And it would have to be transferred by media nerds like me who heard something and obviously eat that stuff up and understand that only enhances their value of people watching their shows or reading their newspapers, which is more what it was, right? And to now have seen the newspaper go the way of the dinosaur in a lot of ways. But to see younger head coaches come up and understand just all the different ways to get to recruits, all the different creative things you can do to differentiate your program now. And I'm hopeful that these guys will also kind of come back to embracing a little bit of relative playful, innocent trash talking, man. And that's not what Mark Stoops was doing, right? He's not that guy. I think he's kind of stuck in the middle. He's not old enough to be a dinosaur. He's not 67 years old like Kirk Ferentz, and I think would have a really hard time, a lot like Steve Spurrier did towards the end for sure, of changing recruiting ways and ways of thinking about communicating. And that doesn't necessarily have to be an age thing, by the way. I think we're seeing. I think we saw that with Dan Mullen. Just didn't want to change how he had always approached college football and seeing the name, image, likeness thing and saying, no thanks. And you're seeing, I mean, you saw Coach K is probably the best example in college sports, have to change his thought process about the college scholarship arrangement with players, and it being 4 years and adjusting to the one and done. So you've seen adjustments all over the place, right? Nick Saban gets credited as the most adaptable coach of all time, changing what he's done on offense, especially through the years, different coordinators rolling through, but the success stays the same. He deserves all that credit. But he specifically, I mean, he's the worst at getting up and preaching, right? And doing it in a weird way, talking about the haves and the have-nots, and he's so worried about the have-nots in college football when it comes to name, image, and likeness. Get out of here. Competitive balance, when you've completely tilted the scales in your favor, you've dominated college football, and you're worried about competitive balance? No, you're not. You're worried about maintaining the stranglehold at the top and keeping those things tilted. And getting called out for that hypocrisy clearly doesn't mean much to him. But I think when you're talking about coaches who value authenticity, who understand the value of authenticity in the recruiting process, I'm hopeful that they're going to see that you can be authentic to a degree that these hypocrites like Nick Saban, throw Jimbo Fisher in there too, right? Yeah, you guys are great now. You're over it. That's just the way things, the way you do things in West Virginia when you're brought up like he and Saban were. That's just how it goes. It's unfortunate that it had to be public. Your press conference comments, get out of here, man. But I'm hopeful that these younger guys can lead the way in just having some fun and allowing everybody to have some fun, to have fan bases have some fun. Because I think it's really easy to misinterpret a bunch of social media comments as a lot more serious than they're meant to be. I'm sure if you have a social media account, you've had this happen to you. I know I have. Or even I write them now, and then I go out of my way to make sure, or to try to make sure, that the tone comes off properly as, hey, man, I'm just trying to have some fun here. No, not serious at all. It's still difficult to do, I think, for a lot of people that just go on there. And I posted something the other day. I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before. It was a kid in Little League, I think, that only has one arm and smashed a home run. And he did it. It's his right arm that isn't fully formed. So I would have naturally assumed that he would hit left-handed and use that swing, but he goes the opposite way. He goes the front arm and launched one. Way gone. And see him running the base. It's so inspiring, man. You got to give the backhand 5 to the first baseman, first base coach. So inspirational. So I just retweeted that the other day, just said, warning, if you're on this app, the Twitter app, to fuel your bitterness, don't watch it. And I feel like so many people hop on social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook is probably the worst, right? To me, Facebook is all about trying to perpetuate an image of near perfection for your family. And then the other side of that is just getting out all your political dissatisfaction. So I very rarely get on there. But there's a lot of that on Twitter too, I guess, more that second part, not just political stuff, but social stuff and the whole thing. People just want to do that. And hey, I'm hopeful that we have become more savvy, more educated, have developed or continuing to develop the ability to kind of to put that in the place it deserves, to understand like that's what some people do for sure, and not just some people, that's what some comments, that's just where they deserve to go. And if it's going to really upset you, then you should probably just ignore it. Just keep scrolling. As opposed to, I think when social media first was developed, it's very easy to take every comment like equally weighted, and it's hard to delineate like what you should ignore and what you should keep scrolling by or whatever. Now, I think we've done it so long, or we continue to do it so long, I'm hopeful we can just do that stuff. I say all of that to say I'm hopeful that coaches who have gone through this a lot like maybe NASCAR did when it went outside of the Southeast footprint and became so corporate and the drivers became so vanilla in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of the original fan base felt completely disconnected to the sport, when it used to be, hey man, yeah, I can't believe that guy did that. Can you guys believe that? Drivers used to call each other out and go after each other, and then it was way too corporate and so much money involved. I think college football head coaches have done that, have gone through that evolution as well, where they a lot of times don't identify with the fans or understand the value of saying things that fans say. And understand too that, hey, you can have some fun with comments, especially if you do it with other coaches who understand, who you have a solid relationship with. That didn't seem to be where Mark Stoops was coming from at all. It came from the chip on the shoulder. I'm a younger brother. Kentucky has never been relevant in SEC football, and we think we deserve more respect than we're getting. And I can't believe people think they're going to be able to create a culture by doing dumb videos, wearing stupid glasses. Just came off as bitter, right? I think there's a way to have fun, make some playful comments, and do it in almost a way that Spurrier and Dabo would go back and forth, where it was just kind of theater for fans, right? I mean, Spurrier is the greatest at that. He knew he could say things that would get his fans riled up, and then that Dabo would come back at him. I don't think it bothered Spurrier in the least. He loved that. Well, let's get that going more. Let's have more of that, man. Like, it's the opposite of the Saban Jimbo thing. Clearly, that is not playful. It is anything but respectful trash talk. Anything but that. The exact opposite. So I'm hoping maybe we'll be able to see that kind of in the museum of college football as the end of an era when it was the ugliest. I'm hoping that can be a prime example of when things started to turn for college football coaches to start to have fun again, man. Yeah, that's a great point too, Chris. I know you've predicted it. Beating Clemson from a South Carolina perspective would be a great way to get the trash talk started up. Hard to say much when you lost 7 in a row. Yeah, you can't. You absolutely can't. But that's the thing. That's where Mark Stoops has gotten to, right? He's gotten to the point. And that's what he was even talking about. That he should be able to give a little bit of trash talk. But you got to do it in the right way. And maybe he feels like he did it in the right way and it was innocent in the whole thing, and Gamecock fans don't. And so maybe I am part of the problem here and not being able to see it as playful or as innocent as it really is. I don't know. But I'm thrilled that it has entered into the conversation now, that it's part of the college football environment in 2022. Because I guess I should point that out too. We have been through such a serious period in our country, and probably in a lot of ways still going through that, at least in my mind politically, But getting through the COVID situation and the lockdowns and all the restrictions and the whole thing, I think I'm hopeful that we can appreciate sports that much more for what it is, as opposed to anywhere close to the serious mess that we've been going through a lot of years now, it seems like. Troy, the resident Clemson fan, says there's still a few Gamecock fans out there that do talk even though they have no ammo. Yeah, but Troy, aren't those doing it tongue in cheek in a lot of ways? Like, I know a lot of Gamecock and Clemson friends out there. There are a lot of Clemson fans who are friends with a bunch of Gamecock fans, and the opposite. And that's where I feel like that is on a different level, right? If you can still go back and forth, but no, you don't have really any room to talk. That's a conversation on a different level. That's a great place to be, right? When you know it's just for kind of a show kind of deal, and it doesn't even mean what you're saying. Yeah, interesting take here. It's not the must-win game of the season, Chris says, but it's close. The South Carolina program has to get back to beating the Wildcats on a yearly basis to even just get back to real legitimacy. Well, I think that's different, though. I agree it's not a must-win game, but I don't think it's what it was even, 3-4 years ago when it started becoming a trend for Kentucky to beat Carolina. Kentucky wasn't picked second in the East in those years. If you lose to Kentucky, if you do what you did last year, you lose to Kentucky, but you beat Florida, you beat Auburn, you don't have to beat Kentucky to get back to legitimate. I mean, if you had to choose, certainly before yesterday, Gamecock fans would absolutely choose beating Florida over beating Kentucky, right? You understand how much more that gives your program, I think? Because Kentucky has earned a spot. They're higher on the totem pole now. Nationally, they're higher. It's not just the SEC East. They have earned a reputation for being close to a top 25 program, I would say. If I was going through programs right now, yeah, probably 35, right? Somewhere in there. But a lot of people think, and I saw that comment yesterday, Stoops just mad because he's already hit the ceiling at Kentucky, and he knows it. He's taking shots. I think there's something to that, man. I mean, we saw what the ceiling became for Steve Spurrier. Stoops has certainly not had 3 11-win seasons, finished in the top 10 3 years in a row. But that was probably Spurrier's biggest regret, right? Leaving and not winning a championship. Unfortunately, that became the ceiling for him. Craig says, I never talk trash when we are winning. I just know it's always about to turn the other way. Chris, good for you. I still talk a little trash with anyone wearing a Paul. That's what rivalries are about. Troy on the Clemson side of it, tell him it's like bringing a water gun to a gunfight with a guy that's got a machine gun. I don't think anymore. And York's not so sure that Gamecock fans would have taken it yesterday before the comment, a Florida win over a Kentucky win. Okay, maybe we'll discuss that more as we roll on this week. Again, tomorrow, got a couple of guests lined up, including Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show. It's going to pop out that podcast. We had a discussion recently as well, so go check that out today for your listening pleasure. And then we'll get, who knows what we'll get into tomorrow, man. Looking forward to mix it up with Chris. DC says, great show today. Appreciate you helping to make it that way, DC. Chris, with the strangers included, he'll just go right at the Clemson fans. Play them in other sports than football and beat them in those sports. Good for you, Chris. He's that guy. Hey, as long as you do it with the right tone, I think that's absolutely the way to go. And I'm guessing Chris probably does. Oh, the podcast is out, Chris says. Check it out. Appreciate you coming on our airwaves, Chris says. Great stuff. Great show today, Tim. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you hopping on today with us via the live chat. Look forward to doing it tomorrow. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And this, I guess, goes into that little discussion, little point I was making about the legacy media, where it was TV and radio, and those were the only options. And it was so was very Anchorman-ish, right? Where you have to battle the other station. You got your little group, and you get your pitchforks out, and you go have a showdown. It's very, very much like you can't give the other group any kind of credit whatsoever. That's not how it is now, right? And Chris is a great example of that. He's nice enough to have me on his podcast. He's going to be on our show tomorrow. That's just the way it is. And we're all better for it. Greg's going to listen now. Troy says, great show. Had fun as always. Thank you, Troy, especially for giving us the Clemson perspective. Chris with a have a good day. Go Cox with emojis. A great way to finish up today. Thanks for checking out this edition on August 17th, 2022. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent. We'll do it again tomorrow. And always 8 to 10, streaming live Monday through Friday. Do the stuff, the subscribe and the comment and the like and the tell the people. And that would be greatly appreciated, as is your support, as always. See you guys.